The poet William Blake called it England's green and pleasant land. But this year, the bucolic sights and sounds of Britain in the springtime have been punctuated by the signs of slaughter and death.
Growing up in North Yorkshire, a county in the north of England which consists of mainly countryside, I remember the foot and mouth outbreak of 2001. My dad remembers it even better, and a conversation with him recently made me realise that, even though I remember it, I don't really know much about it. So in the second episode of Tax Shorts, I'll be taking a look at the foot and mouth outbreak and how bad it really was. Britain's last outbreak had been in 1967 and had been confined to a small area in the country. The Northumberland report issued after the outbreak had identified the speed was the key to stopping the future outbreak. When identified, animals should be slaughtered on the spot the same day, and the carcasses should be buried in quicklime. The virus that causes painful blisters inside the mouth and under the hooves, and can cause lameness and problems feeding. Rarely affecting humans, it could however kill young animals. In 1980, foot and mouth treatment policies passed from the hands of the UK government to the European level. This meant that no farms in the UK were allowed to bury their animals in quicklime unless authorised by the Environmental Agency. Since the 1967 outbreak, there had also been significant changes in farming methods. The closure of many local abattoirs meant that animals for slaughter were now being transported greater distances. On February 19, 2001, the first cases of foot and mouth were detected in Cheal Meat Abattoir in Little Worley, Essex. The disease was detected in pigs that had just arrived from Buckinghamshire and the Isle of Wight. On the 23rd of February, a case was confirmed 289 miles away in Heddon-on-the-Wall, Northumberland, from where the pig in the first case had come. This farm was later confirmed to be the source of the outbreak, and the owner, Bobby Waugh of Pallion, was found guilty of having failed to inform the authorities of a notifiable disease and banned from keeping farm animals for 15 years. He was later found guilty of feeding his pigs untreated water. On the 24th of February, a case was announced in Highhampton in Devon. Later in the week, North Wales was affected. By the beginning of March, the disease had spread to Cornwall, southern Scotland and the Lake District, where it took a particularly strong hold. During investigation of the Selby rail crash, which took place on the 28th of February in North Yorkshire, investigators visiting the crash site had to go through decontamination to prevent possible contamination of the crash site's soil with the virus. By the start of March, the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food brought forward a policy that carcasses from cull that couldn't be disposed of at farms where they currently were should be driven to a rendering plant in Widnes. This oversight saw diseased animals driven through areas that had no cases at all, meaning the disease spread faster. This led to new policy that any animal within a 3-kilometre radius of a diseased animal should be slaughtered. This was immediately clarified to apply only to sheep, not to cows or pigs. This is the time that I remember the most. I remember very vividly rows and rows of dead animals in fields and plumes of smoke coming from farms as they were burning the animals. TV screens were filled with images of giant bonfires of carcasses and soldiers digging mass graves. The policy also meant that tourism took a nosedive. During the summer months, villages and towns that relied on tourism were both affected. People were told to stay away from the national parks and country walks were shut off. It brought the farming industry to a standstill, but it affected all walks of life. It took 9 months to bring the foot and mouth under control, costing the UK's public sector £3 billion and the private sector £5 billion. It was impossible to trace exactly how it arrived in the UK. It was theorised that it probably came from somewhere in Asia and travelled to the UK via South Africa, in either catering waste or illegal imported meats. British authorities made some immediate reforms after the devastation to try and stop the virus coming back. There was a ban on feeding animals with any catering waste or kitchen scraps. The virus can survive on even partially cooked meats for months. An outbreak in 2007 showed that lessons had been learnt. A case was confirmed in cattle on a Surrey farm. It was traced to a faulty drainage pipe at a nearby research facility where the virus was being used to manufacture animal vaccines. The scale provoked the immediate robust response. Susceptible animals on the affected farms were culled 2 days after the strain was discovered, and protection zones of 3 kilometres and surveillance zones of 10 kilometres were set up in accordance with the new European policies. Although a second outbreak popped up 30 miles from the original site, there were only 8 confirmed cases overall. Foot and mouth disease changed the way that we farmed. We now have identification and tracing systems for our animals, rehearsed contingency plans and technological advances in disease control All of these reduce the risk of impact of disease and make us stronger and more resilient. The government also introduced a 6-day standstill policy to help prevent the spread of disease. If any new cattle, sheep or goats are brought onto a farm, none of them will leave the area for 6 days. Pigs stand still for 20 days. All of these measures, while at the time seemed extreme, now shadow another event that is currently happening around the world. And if you've liked this video, please like it and think about subscribing to see more. And until next time, thank you.